The first game that you ever play on like a new console is bound to have a little like magic or whatever to it. It will without a doubt leave a lasting impression, whether it be positive or negative. And the first game that I ever played on my PS5 was a game that immediately caught my eye from the first trailer that I ever saw. And I knew it was the game that I was most excited to play on the next gen console. Was the reason I wanted to get a PS5 so bad. I think it's safe to say when it comes to Ghostwire Tokyo, I have some pretty strong opinions. However, despite how much I absolutely love the game, a lot of people wrote it off. I do see some people's problems with the game, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, but I also really just want to share the experience I had with this game and go a little bit into detail about some of the things that I really enjoyed, but also saw issue with as well. Maybe I'm blinded by it being the first game I played on the new console, but upon replaying this game, the developers also released a huge update as well as DLC. So there are a lot of things that were also new to me, and the game was just that much better in my eyes. I mean, I already liked it to begin with, but they really added a lot of things that were needed to help the game be a little more, I don't know, eye-catching, interesting to other people. Yeah, this is a review I've been wanting to do since I first started doing reviews. I think I talked about it in the first review I ever did, but let's just get right into it because I ramble and I'm going off script, so let's get right back on track. As always, sit back and relax, grab a snack or something, and we're gonna do this review of Ghostwire Tokyo. Silly because I didn't even realize the game had that big update that it had. I just went into it knowing I wanted to do this review. I know I had bonuses from beating the game initially that I had, but I also just thought some of the things that were updates were part of my bonus until like there was like a new enemy that I saw and I literally almost peed my pants and I was like hyperventilating. I was like, what is this? It was ridiculous. It was actually terrifying. It was like invisible and like everything started floating in the air and I was like, hold on, let's take a break. Let me go. Let me check the trailers if they had an update. And yeah, they had an update. But yeah, they had a lot of new enemy variety. They added new attacks, they added new missions, but the first thing I want to talk about is the story. The game takes place in Tokyo, or more specifically Shibuya, and it follows an event that wipes out nearly the entire population, which was the appearance of some sort of like toxic fog that killed anything and everyone that it touched. And the character you play as, Akito, had been involved in a car crash and was rendered unconscious, allowing for the other protagonist, KK, which was a spirit, to possess his body, kind of. You see, since Akito wasn't dead, KK wasn't able to gain control over Akito's body, but just transfer some of his powers to him and sort of sits as like a passenger in his mind, which obviously Akito's like freaking out and like screaming. I mean, fair. I think that was a little bit jarring for him. So soon after that, a masked man named Hanya, the villain of the story, summons visitors or evil spirits, which are basically the bad entities in this game, and seals away the people spirits that were like killed by the fog into cubes, which you have to collect throughout the entire game. Before pursuing Hanya though, Akito needs to look for his sister in the hospital, who we learn has suffered from some sort of like accident. Turns out Hanya stole his sister, or well, he kidnapped her to use her from some sort of like ritual. We don't really figure that out until like later in the game, but it was like kind of disturbing. And like Akito is clearly like distressed by the revelation that his sister was stolen by the main villain in this game, and he attempts to stop Hanya but gets stabbed, and he ends up being at death's door for the second time in 30 minutes. It turns out Mari was in like a coma due to this house fire that they had, and Akito was clearly very guilty. He feels very guilty about the situation, and we learn about it more later in the game. But KK offers to save his life if he helps him stop Hanya and get his sister back in the process. They then go to KK's safe house. We learn that he used to be some sort of paranormal investigator among others who tried to stop Hanya in the past, and they obviously failed. Akito and KK then end up pursuing one of Hanya's henchmen and follow him into this underground subway and find out that Hanya has been doing all this to resurrect his dead wife, who previously died from an illness, and he's trying to steal like enough souls to break the barrier between the living and the dead, and is obviously willing to do anything to make it happen. Now I'm obviously trying to be vague in order to like not spoil the game, and there's like even more interesting and heartbreaking arcs later in the game, but I'll just leave it here for now because I do want, like, if you watch this video and you find it interesting, I don't want you to have like the whole game spoiled for you, so I do want people to go out and experience it for themselves like I did for the first time. The overall premise for this game caught my attention and hooked it the entire playthrough. Tokyo being known for its lively and bright atmosphere, and you see it reduced to like nothing. It's very like chilling. It's quite ominous, and I think the developers did a good job with it. There's still signs of what used to be, with like bright store-lit signs, traditional music playing from some of the buildings, bags and clutter, and restaurants and parking areas. With the exclusion of regular NPCs, I think games often struggle to paint a picture and immerse the player. NPCs, while seemingly useless at times, I think really do help set the scene of where an environment or where a game's taking place, whether it be their clothes, dialect, how they walk, what they're doing, how they interact with other NPCs. But this game doesn't have NPCs because they're all dead. I mean, not really. They do have NPCs, but not in the traditional sense. They're basically exploring this large city alone, but the game does an amazing job of telling stories. All over you'll find little readables like phone texts, emails, letters, and stuff like that, and each with unique things written inside of them or on them. Some texts are sent to moms about groceries or something, or someone texting a friend about the way the moon looks or what is this fog. Some of the letters are from like bosses with like work-related issues. There's invitations, there's threats. It's just so much story building, and also the set dressing complements this as well. And the spirits that I mentioned earlier that you go around and collect also have unique dialogue, and they're like floating in the air, and it's quite disturbing and like scary at times. And they'll say different things like help me, or I want to go home, or this canvas is too far away for me to paint. Like, they're just so unique. Some of them are reused. I mean, that's just gonna happen, especially with another issue with this game, with the sheer vast of things that there are to do. Every one of these details helps build their own narratives that the player is left to investigate or assume. I can see how this can come across as boring, but there really are some intriguing things to find while exploring, not to mention the side quests. Now, the side quests, everyone knows I love a side quest, and this game is no exception. The side quests are broken up into different categories. There's obviously the more narrative side quests, which are focused on helping spirits move on by taking care of things in the physical world that are keeping them from doing so, which often end up with you having to seal some sort of specter or corrupt spirit. These quests can be someone worried about his friend who went missing after going to a subway station, or a woman who can't find her daughter. These quests in themselves are all unique and interesting to me, and they all hold some sort of emotional weight, whether that be fear, sadness, or even relief at times, and some of them are just like hilarious. You get to interact with these spirits that may seem to have some very unserious or slightly worrying concerns, and they're all done very well in my opinion. It's probably the highlight of the game. There are an endless number of quests, all with varying goals, and some are even like multi-part. You can unlock more quests when you cleanse corrupt shrines or torii gates, which effectively clear up some of the fog that's around the area. Sort of like synchronizing in Assassin's Creed, it just opens everything up. Anyways, I really enjoy meeting all these characters that, while you can't really see what they look like, you can paint a pretty clear image in your head of their personality. The one issue I guess that does come from this is that the missions can come across as repetitive despite the actual content variation, because every spirit looks the exact same and you can't like see their emotions, but you can hear them. That being said, despite this, I think the voice acting was nothing short of amazing. I played this game with the Japanese audio, and not to mention Akito and KK's voice actors, who are amazing and have such great banter and back and forth between each other, and just are all around super fun to play with, which is a problem that another game I reviewed had a terrible job of. I don't want to talk about that game. I never wanted to like really hear anything about that game ever again. The side mission characters were also amazing. Without seeing their emotion, you could really feel what you needed to feel. And I don't want to talk too much about the side missions, but I do want to mention some of my favorites. One being Strung with the Curse, which is about a bitter musician who's jealous of a prodigy. That one also was like kind of a scary. It wasn't like a scary mission, but it scared me. You have to go around the house figuring out why this girl who's playing the piano, it's like becoming very haunting, and like she's playing the wrong note. She can't play the song. I think it was Moonlight Sonata. I think she was playing the first movement. The next one I really enjoyed a lot was Haunting Vision side quest, which was a girl who had transplanted eyes into her head that were haunted by this other guy that was seeing a terrifying visitor that scared me so much every time I saw her, and I tried to avoid her at all costs, but the game kind of forced you to like see her a lot. Lastly, I wanted to talk about one of the new side quests they added, which was called Fear the Children. And I also have some footage I recorded on my phone of me like losing my mind in terror. It was pretty embarrassing. I couldn't like set my camera up because it was dead, but I did want to record how I was reacting because it was like I was genuinely like peeing myself. So yeah, enjoy this very bad quality footage that I recorded.
This part of the game has been causing me very to be. Oh my god! Bro, my god! Stop! What do you want? Oh! What if I let him out? Not happy, perhaps? Whew, that was scary. I almost threw up. What the? Bro! Go away! I didn't know he could come in here.
Yeah, I'm not the best when it comes to scary stuff. But yeah, enough of the side quests. There's also just so much to do and collect. There's like yokai hunting, where you're basically hunting down these different mythical creatures that are like known to Japanese culture, and you have to collect their power, magatama, which you can then use for upgrades. You also can find these tanuki, which are kind of like raccoons. I mean, that's what they look like to me. And they're disguised as like everyday objects, and that's just they're so funny. They're so like, the way they talk, they're like, yo brother, like it's so funny to me. The way they talk, their dialogue is so funny and random. They're just like these little raccoons or tanuki like running around as like a vending machine, and they're like, oh, you found me, the boss is gonna be mad, like the boss is like a Yakuza boss or something. But there's just so many things in this game, and honestly it's a bit too much, like especially with the spirit collecting, because like they want you to absorb like 250,000 necessary for the 100% completion of just the place, but not even like every spirit in the game. There's more than 250,000, especially with the added DLC. It takes a while. It's gonna take you quite a bit of time, and it sucks because rather than enjoying the map and level design, I found myself using spectral vision, which is like eagle vision or Revelio in Hogwarts Legacy. You tend to not really see what's in front of you because you're just looking for spirits or things around you, and it takes away from it a little bit if you don't really know, if you're not really looking for it. If you're just looking, trying to get 100% completion, you're not gonna be able to enjoy the game as much as I feel like the developers want you to. But I think there is almost too much in this game, especially for completionists. That's something to keep in mind. Now, like I said, enough about the side content. I want to get into the combat, which is unfortunately where most people's negativity comes from, including some of my own. Your combat essentially revolves around something called ethereal weaving, or like elemental abilities. There's also like arrows, but I never really use them because they're also very hard to find, and it's just better to like go break the ether crystals to get the ether, which I'll talk about in a second. I think I do talk about that in a little bit. Also, there's melee attacks, which are absolutely useless. They're like laughably weak, and they're basically like just a waste of time unless you have the ether generation upgrade. But also, even then, it's still not really worth it. I do like a melee hit once every hour, like 4 hours playing this game. But you have 3 ethereal weaving categories or styles. First off is the green or wind style, which is what you start the game with. It's a more direct style. It's basically like a pistol. All of the attacks also have like a charge variation, and for wind weaving, it gives you multiple quick fire shots, maxing at 4 with upgrades. After the update, they also added some sort of like semi-automatic shooting variation, which I found like super cool, but it's also a little out of touch in my opinion with the rest of the game. Like you have like a semi-automatic machine gun shooting out of your fingers, just compared to the other like mystical elements of the game. It's still really cool to me. It just was a little strange to see it. I still used it all the time. I love using it because it looked freaking cool. It looked sick. The next style is the blue or the water weaving style, which is a little bit slower, and it produces a more wide slice. It's more helpful when you're fighting multiple enemies at once because it can damage multiple enemies in a pretty wide field. And the charged version of this is that you get more shots at once, kind of like if a shotgun was loaded with like katanas or something. The new special attack they added is one of my favorite, and it freezes the enemies around you in like a 360 degrees. And I also want to talk about really quick the hand movements and the animation of the hands and like the things they do when they like do the ethereal weaving, because I think it looks sick. It's like very reminiscent of like Naruto when they're doing like the jutsus. That's basically what he's doing, especially when he's charging the attacks before you get the upgrades. It's very slow and like jutsu-esque, and I think it looks sick, and I love watching back my playthroughs and other people's playthroughs and just seeing how it looks. Lastly, the red or fire style, which is by far the most powerful attack, but it's also much slower to fire. It's very helpful when you're facing more like beefy enemies, or if you just want the fight to end. It'll make quick work of most enemies in the game. And all of these attacks have a certain count, and when you run out, you have to go collect ether from the crystallized ether shaped as everyday objects, which I was talking a little bit about before, or maybe I didn't. I don't actually know if I said that. You also have a shield that does protect you from these attacks, but it can be broken from stronger enemies almost like immediately, and that wasn't a thing before. You did have a shield, but it couldn't break. You can also do a perfect block, and with a certain upgrade, you can generate ether or even blast enemies back with a counter. There's also a cool core grab feature that allows you to grab cores of enemies once you've attacked them enough to expose them. Along with like bonus XP, you can also unlock HP generation later on, so it's more worthwhile, I think. There's also the ground and melee core grab upgrades that are just much faster and less risky. You see, with the default core grab, it takes like a painfully long amount of time considering enemies constantly rush at you, and if you get hit while trying to do the core grab, the core is no longer exposed, and you also don't have to perform a core grab to down an enemy. You could just hit them and they'll die. You just don't get like the added benefits with the XP, and it just like it looks pretty cool. Like it just looks cool. Ooh, jeez, a flip. Going back to the upgrades, there's a few that I think are definitely necessary, and for me personally, the grapple summon Tengu was an absolute hack. You could literally be Spider-Man flying through the city. It was ridiculous. I just think it was so broken. Like, not broken, but when you upgrade that, it makes it so much easier to do anything in the game. The charge attack time boost is also helpful. Later in the game though, you get this cool wiring ability, which happens when KK and Akito really become one, and they like actually start start bonding together. And when you activate it, the enemies around you become more susceptible to having their cores exposed, and time also slows down, and the initial shockwave when you first unleash this attack exposes multiple cores like off the bat. So I do want to talk about the enemy variety or visitor variety, like I said, that's what they're called, because I truly think that it's very, very good, especially with the new additions. Excluding the bosses for now, because I'm going to talk about that later, but not only are there a vast number of enemy types, but they also are all unique in their own way and have variations among them as well. For example, there's the Paper Doll, Passenger, and Marionette. They're more feminine built visitors and they're really specializing in ranged attacks, but they all have different like special ranged attacks that they have. The Paper Doll shoots numerous slow moving orbs that can quickly overwhelm and surround you. The Marionette can also shoot these orbs as well as heal other visitors around her with these green orbs. And the Passenger, which releases slow moving orbs also, but they can hone in on you and they're very fast and quite terrifying sometimes, so look out for those. There's just so many enemies in Ghostwire Tokyo, and I think they're all revealed to the player at a very steady pace that keeps them interested and intrigued at the same time. I want to go a little bit more into the enemy types, and some of my favorite enemy types that freak me out were definitely the Shine Dancer, which I won't be describing because it is a bit too dark to describe, but I'll leave it for you guys to see, but just proceed with caution because it is kind of disturbing and dark, which a lot of them are, but this one specifically is kind of triggering also. But the way it laughs too, and it's flying around, it's terrifying. It can overwhelm and bombard you with these blasts. Next, the Kuchisake, which terrifies me beyond belief, which I talked about before with one of the side quests. She's there all the time, and the first time you see her, it's like she kind of comes out of nowhere, and I froze completely, like I did not know what to do. And there's also the Crimson Kuchisake, who is her unmasked counterpart, and it's even creepier looking because under the mask it's no good. She should put it back on. The Relentless and the Rage Walker also mix things up quite a bit on their first appearance, as they're like heavier set visitors and they require different sets of attacks to take them down. And each visitor type also has its own explanation behind why they exist. Each visitor is born from a different negative emotion or experience. It's kind of like Jujutsu Kaisen. The sheer detail that goes into these descriptions matched with their movesets makes each enemy more interesting, and you even feel very conflicted fighting them. The Forlorn being a very depressing entity. It's like a child-like visitor born from the sorrow of abused children. That being said, the Forlorn is not a combative enemy, but if it discovers you, it'll call upon other enemies and run off, almost like a PTSD response to an emotional trigger. The sheer presence of the player, despite the intentions, even if they were good, is enough to spook them. And also the detail that Akito and Keiki don't grab their cores but silently seal them away is also just a pretty sad and pretty thoughtful touch by the developers, I think. Almost like you're releasing them from the pain. I don't want to get into the other visitors because I want to leave that mystery for you if you haven't played the game yet, but I think the enemy variety is top notch. There's so many different types of visitors and there's so much lore behind each of them. Speaking of enemies, I want to briefly talk about the boss fights, which on the surface are very interesting, and the boss designs are also very unique and disturbing in their own right, and the arena design is different, it allows for different strategies. Komote boss fight, the music is banging, bro. No, it's crazy. I listen to it all the time. I like will literally pull it up like after I finish this review and listen to it again. I mean, the music in this game itself is just so incredible to me. It's so like everything makes sense. Some of them are like very traditional sounding and some of them have a little spin, some of them are dark, but the only problem with the boss fight is that they're not hard, which is not good for a boss fight to not be hard. I understand. It's disappointing because they're cool. Like, they're tricky at first, but once you kind of figure out what you have to do, you can get it done pretty quick. Like the Komote boss fight, I was stuck a little bit at first, but once I figured out I could just sneak up behind... Oh. I'm not going to tell you how I beat her, or it, but... You know, it's pretty easy once you figure it out. You can kind of fly through it. But it sucks because they're so interesting to look at. The level designs are always really cool, and the attacks that the enemies use and the attacks you have to use against the enemies are also very cool. But I just wish they were more challenging, and I wish there was more variation, maybe cutscenes in it. It was just a very like bullet spongy type boss battle. All in all, this game is amazing to me, but held back by a few things. I think the combat is a bit repetitive, but with the updates that they added, I think they did fix it, but I think it was like it was too little too late, or too much too late, I guess is the saying. It's just like there's so many enemies everywhere, and if you're doing a bunch of side quests, you're gonna be fighting a bunch of visitors and you just get tired of it. And then they also added in the fire style, which I'm glad they added it later in the game because it is so broken. You can one shot anyone. You can even like, even the big boss battles, like once I was playing this game again for like the 3rd time, I was getting a little tired of fighting some of the same bosses, so I was just like, not bosses, but more the bullet spongy enemies, not necessarily the bosses. I kind of just wanted to get them out the way, so I was just throwing bang, 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 just fire blast everywhere. The charged ones especially, you're done for. They also added in like aerial assassinations, which is also cool. I think it's not like necessarily like, you know, Assassin's Creed-esque, but it is like a core grab aerial assassination. You take the cores out when they're not looking, and I think it's really cool. And you can also do like, you can also like double, triple stack it, so when you land, slow motion, you go to the enemy. It's also very weird to use that because you don't really lock onto another enemy. You just kind of hold them. It's weird. It's weird. I mean, I like that they added it, but there's also just so many side quests and collectibles, and I applaud the developers for putting all this in the game. But from a completionist standpoint, if you really do want to get that 100%, you're gonna be spending so much time. Like the story itself, probably double the story. Maybe not that much. I'm being dramatic, but you spend a lot of time just looking around for things, and it does get very repetitive, very boring at times, unless you really do enjoy the combat and enjoy the things you're finding. But playing it again like twice, 3 times, I feel like the replayability of the game isn't really where I would hope it would be, considering how much I love it. Like I was saying before, you sometimes use this eagle vision ability and it takes away from what you're supposed to be seeing, because you're seeing everything from this lens, that you're seeing spirits and tanuki and yokai and all these other collectibles, and you're not seeing the work the developers put in. The rain, the rain is a very weird thing, because the rain that falls is like, when you first look at it, you're like, this rain looks ass. Like, what is this? The rain is the kanji for rain in Japanese. So it's a cool touch, but it makes the rain just look very thick. But it also feels like you're kind of in a simulation, so it's like it leads other speculation for what's going on. There's also times when the rain goes backwards. I'm not sure what causes that. I didn't look it up yet. I just thought about it just now, and it was like really weird and scary. Like there's things that happen in the game that are so cool, and it's like, I know people won't be able to experience them because they'll get stuck behind the combat being repetitive, behind the sheer number of things there is to do. But this game is actually very good, and it's sad to me that I'm like, I can't talk to anyone about this game. Like when people always ask me like, what's the best, one of your favorite games on PS5, I always say Ghostwire Tokyo, and everyone's like, oh, what is that? But yeah, I hope you guys like the new PC. I hope you guys like, I have a new camera. Like, I don't have a new, no I don't, I just completely lied. I have a new like microphone setup, and I have a tripod now, and I have like little lights set up. I'm so excited. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys give Ghostwire Tokyo a chance. If you don't give it a chance, that's fine. I wouldn't recommend playing full price for it. Get it on sale somewhere. I think when I checked, it was like 20% off one time, or get it used at GameStop. I would not recommend paying like full price for it, especially if it's not something you're completely sure of. But I would give it a try. At least you can say you tried it, especially after the updates. If you haven't played the game since the updates, please do it. I think you will be pleasantly surprised. But yeah, I have some games in mind that I do want to play, and I have some reviews in mind that I'm very excited for, and some games that are coming out that I'm excited for. But yeah, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much again for 100 subscribers. I'm so excited about that. It's insane to me. I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will be taking my leave. I don't know what to say. All right, bye.